This is a Solid Signal podcast for the week of July 16th, 2018. Let's get back to business. Last couple of weeks I've done some very speculative and off-topic podcasts, and they also kind of ran long. Let's reel it back in and talk about something that's very important, especially this time of year. You know, it's July, and for most of us, that means that it's time to be outside. It's time to spend some time enjoying the moderate weather while we still have it, because winter is never that far away. Unless you happen to be in Phoenix or Palm Springs or Las Vegas, you have the unique ability this time of year to spend time walking around your home and looking at some of the issues that you might have and some of the things that you might want to spend time fixing. You know, you should never take for granted that your outdoor cabling is perfect, even if you just put it up. Winter does a number on cables. You know, things freeze and expand and contract, corrosion happens, and it's really a good idea to make sure that no matter what you do, that you're going to have great home theater experiences all year round. This is the time to look at that. This is the time to fix that. At the recommendation of some of the other folks at Solid Signal, I'm going to be producing a video if I can find some of the really worst cases among friends of mine who have not yet fixed up their homes. But in the meantime, let's talk about it in a podcast kind of venue, as it were. It's very important that as you look at any connection outside of your home, that you look for any signs of corrosion. Corrosion happens on even stainless steel parts. As time goes on, water sits on them and they begin to get rusty, or you start seeing green specks on them, which is a sign that copper is exposed. That's a very bad sign. And these are the things that you should be taking care of immediately. If you see any connector that's in really bad shape, and I'm not talking about just dirty or dull, but I mean something where corrosion is very obvious, you should replace that connector because it's going to fail on you at some point. I can guarantee that. The exception, I would say, is your outdoor TV antenna. If your TV antenna is showing a black dust settling on top of it, that is technically oxidation, but you don't need to take that off. An oxidized aluminum antenna loses practically nothing compared to a regular aluminum antenna, and that layer of oxidation actually prevents further corrosion from happening, which is a fairly unique quality of aluminum, and one of the reasons that aluminum antennas are out there all the time. Another thing you need to look at are any cables or cords that are outside, especially if they're exposed to the sunlight, to see that the outer jacket, the plastic shell of the cable, is not beginning to totally degrade. It shouldn't feel crumbly or crusty. You shouldn't see any fissures, any divisions in it. And if you see something like that, especially in a cable that carries electricity, this is something that you need to be addressing right away. If it's the cable that goes to your internet equipment or something like that, you should be calling your internet service provider and making sure that's taken care of. Just do not let them off the hook on this sort of thing, because the last thing you want is for your internet to go out and throw a breaker at the same time. You just don't want to see something like that. Overall, you should be looking at your satellite dish. A little bit of bird droppings on the reflector isn't going to hurt you. However, if you're seeing some serious bird droppings, then I would wait till a relatively cloudy day, not direct sunlight, and then coat the outside of the reflector with simple green or something else that you can leave on for about a half an hour, and then very gently rinse it off with a hose. Don't spray it with pressure washing equipment or something like that, because you're going to knock the reflector out of business. Take a look at the feed horn and the L&B, that's the sticky outy part of the satellite dish, to make sure that that looks good as well. Make sure that you don't have insects or, in some cases, birds actually nesting inside that stuff, because that's not going to make it look very good. Take a look at, if you have a cellular signal booster, make sure that it's still properly aimed, that you're not necessarily getting better signal from pointing it somewhere else. You can find a couple of different websites that'll show you cell tower stuff, but you can also just make sure that by moving the booster around that you're not getting a whole bunch better service. New cell towers go up all the time. And in some cases, you don't even need a cell booster anymore because a new cell tower has gone up. But more often than not, just aiming at a different one is going to give you even better results. because I do recommend that all cellular antennas be up at least 15 feet from the base unit, then you're probably using a fairly tall mast on your cellular antenna, and make sure that it's properly anchored. The last thing you want is that whole thing falling down and hitting somebody or what have you, something like that. I guess my point is, folks, that this is a time to be walking around, this is a time to be checking stuff, and this is a time to be fixing stuff. Before the fall comes, kids go back to school, you get tied up with fall preparations, and eventually it begins to snow. Take my advice, shop at Solid Signal for the stuff that you're going to need to make everything right, whether it's cables or grounding equipment or new connectors. And in the meantime, have yourself a great week, and we'll be back again with more tips next time.